So thank you for joining us on this week's marketing sandwich course. Not really sure what number we're up to. We've done so many since lockdown kicked in. Today we're speaking to Helen Hepworth, who's from a business called Collective Stories. And your background is in category management, which is a section of marketing that is not something that I've ever really touched, because obviously people think of marketing as always a kind of big homogenous thing. There are lots of specialities in that. So, Helen, I'd love to know more about category management, your history in it, and your role, and how you take that forward. So, over to you, Helen.
Careful what you wish for there, Richard, because I really can talk about category management for a long time. So, buckle up, everybody. So, my name is Helen Hepworth, and I founded Collective Stories about 2 years ago now, with a view to bringing a different, more creative storytelling lens to category management. Category management isn't new, it's been around for a long time, I think since the 80s, whereby a lot of experts came together and said, instead of selling my brand and as much as I can sell of my brand, why don't I look at the collection of brands on shelf as a category and think about this category as a whole group of products that complement each other, that can be substituted for each other, and that have meet different need states for the customer. So category management really evolved, but it was only in the late 90s, early noughties that it started appearing in retail, which is where I appear on the scene, working for a small private label supplier who supplied most of the UK retailers, which was a really great background, sort of from the ground up, gave you the ability to start telling a story from a new product development perspective. Why do people want this product? Why would they buy it? How can we sell it to them? Which retailer is most appropriate for it? But again, it wasn't very scientific back then. It was basically a case of turning up with a black bag and selling in what you could. Then in sort of the mid 2005, 2006, category management really hit the big time in retail, and a lot of retailers actually took on a huge category management resource within their businesses and really saw the benefit of investing in insight, consumer insight, range optimization, and then supplier-led category management tactics, so category captaincy, where a supplier is actually in charge of a category. And that really did open up this whole world of category management, which I find myself in now. But I think I'm a bit different from most category management businesses out there, because I pride myself on being a bit of a storyteller. Now, take this as you will. Storytelling can sometimes be seen as a bit whimsical. You know, most stories include a dragon or a fairy. Certainly do in my personal life, you know. But most stories, when you say storytelling, people are like, doesn't sound very businesslike or efficient. Where's my data? Where's my facts? Where's my figures? Where's my commercial feel to it? But actually, where we see storytelling as Collective Stories, we see that every business story is exactly the same as a normal story. It has a journey.
Yeah.
It has, so that's from shelf to basket to consumption. It has a hero, which is your customer. It has a protagonist, your enemy, who is probably one of your competitors, or who is somebody who doesn't believe in your vision. And bringing all that together and making it a bit interesting by bringing in data. So segmentation data, that's customer data. By bringing in customer insight, that's behavioural insight, that's the personas that we were just talking about, and really everything about that customer, what affects them in their life. And then an output. So this is where I really believe Collective Stories has the edge over other businesses who do this. We don't just tell a story, we don't just bring the data, we will always drive the so whats. So, I've given you a 90-page deck and it's an amazing story. Everybody's excited. Everybody feels like this is the most fabulous idea we've ever had. Right, what next? Because if you say, right, we'll go away and think about it, chances are you're going to lose momentum, you're going to lose energy, you're going to lose half of the facts. But if we come to you as a business and we say, from a commercial perspective, we have this range of products, you should launch it because it's great. Customers love it. Customers will buy it because of X, Y, and Z. But then what we do is we'll say it will also deliver for you X category benefit over the next 3 years. So it's being creative storytellers, being category managers, but being commercial as well, that is the collective story.
So can you give me an example of what a category benefit would be?
Yeah, so category benefit would, let's think about something like plant-based food, or free from, or different, so diet, wellness.
Right.
So if you think, I think it was this week, Asda have just announced that they've got a whole range of, I think it's free from, it could be free from, it could be plant-free, a whole aisle dedicated to this. That is one of the biggest, pre-COVID, that was one of the biggest trends in our market. So that's a category benefit by bringing to them products like that. That's not just saying we're bringing you a product, you're bringing growth, and you're bringing an experiential, experimental aspect to it. You're saying we're putting these products in for this customer that's evolving for you. It's not necessarily a customer you've already got, but it's a customer group that's growing. So it's identifying little nuggets and pockets of growth and taking that on and snowballing that on and pushing it on for the retailer.
Okay. Can I play devil's, I don't want to interrupt you, Phil, but I can just play devil's advocate. So do we really think that me going down a shopping aisle see that, or do I just see, oh, they've got some vegan stuff or free from stuff, or do you, how much of this is kind of in your realm, and that's not to knock your realm, and in the retailer's realm, and they kind of get really excited about that. I understand that. How does that translate into have we got evidence of how that translates into humans, into actual customers?
Absolutely. So the oldest stories ever told always have a level of empathy. Mm-hmm. And that is why we are called collective stories, because we recognise empathy. So if you have done your job right as an FMCG manufacturer, your customer won't even know that all of this work has gone on in the background. If anything, it should just feel to them that they're picking up a product, they really like it. You know, why hasn't somebody invented this before? Yes. They can't explain why they're delighted, but they are. Yeah. If those products don't appeal to you walking down the aisle, it's not that the manufacturer or the retailer hasn't done their job. It's just not for you. You're not interested in that, and the why you would be. And the biggest amount of POS, so point of sale spend, that would be things that attract you to the fixture, would not work, would not be of interest to you. There's certain categories that you're just not interested in. Yeah. But if you've noticed it, then we've done our job, because you've noticed it, and you'll say to somebody later on, do you know, I was in Asda the other day and they had a whole aisle of free from lager, or they had a whole aisle of vegan foods. Who on earth is buying that?
You know what? I said that exact thing to my wife this Saturday, because I went to our new Aldi. Our new Aldi had just been done out. It was a horrible place before, but now they've moved it around, which has confused the hell out of me because the flow is different. But I went down an aisle, and there's, in the frozen food aisle, there's a whole vegan section of food in Aldi. Yeah. That I just went, well, I'm a meat eater. We'll get that out there straight away. So it's not for me. Yeah. But I noticed it, but kind of went, oh yeah, they've got that. Not for me. So I passed on. But for people who are looking for that, it's like, oh wow, Aldi have now got vegan stuff, and they've got a whole range, not just like some sausages. They've got a whole aisle of the damn stuff.
And don't forget as well, so the plant-based trend and the wellness trend in food, it's not just about, you can be a flexitarian, you can be one or the other. Now, if you are one or the other, you can live your life as part-time vegan, part-time vegetarian. This is going to be controversial. Don't send me any vegans.
I can see the hate emails coming already.
I love you, vegans. But you can, and it's the fact that you might choose to be a vegetarian certain days of the week, and you've done that because of health benefits, or you've seen a lifestyle that you aspire to be like, and that is again linked back to empathy and this concept of, I have seen how you feel and I've brought that to shelf. So we mentioned before when we were chatting about incontinence, and there is no topic that is off limits for me after spending a long time working in the incontinence market. The whole point of a market like incontinence and menstruation is actually feeling how people feel and building products and stories. Remember, they always link back to a story. your hero is your customer. Your hero is your customer who wants to live their life in an active and normal fashion, doesn't want to feel like they feel. So you then have to focus your product and your selling to the retailer or to whoever, to the brand or whoever, on showing that you have this high level of empathy for that customer and that you understand what they're going through. Because if you put that product on shelf and were very matter of fact about it, it doesn't meet the aspirations or the needs of that customer on any level. So that's building the story. Also, taking it right back to basics, building a story can be as simple as getting somebody's PowerPoint deck and making it less boring and making it more targeted and making it more focused, because simple readjustments to a story will definitely deliver results. So, for example, I worked in an industry once where they hadn't touched the fixture in a while. So that's the fixtures where we put products. And then they made some adjustments and saw a huge uplift in sales and couldn't really explain it. But it was simply that change had attracted attention, had converted to sales. And it's that same thing about your story. If you've been telling the same marketing story for, I say marketing with quotation marks because I'm a reluctant marketeer. If you've been telling a story the same way for 10 years and you've never revisited that story, you've never turned it on its head and actually looked at your data and actually looked at your branding and said, are we still feeling this? Or, opened up your laptop in a retailer meeting and you've got 70 slides of substandard, crappy 1984 PowerPoint with a target. Do you remember the old PowerPoint where it was a man shooting an arrow to a target?
Yeah. Been there, seen it, done it.
Seen it. 70 slides of it. There's people on this call who I know for a fact have seen it. 70 slides. That time when you get to a meeting with a supplier, you open your laptop and they're pulling up this presentation that takes 15 years to load up on a laptop from 1985 and 70 slides, and you think, if you're not going to sell me this in 5 slides, I don't want it, because I don't need to know all the stuff behind it.
I was once in a client meeting and we'd spent weeks, the whole team had spent weeks pulling together this PowerPoint for this really important client that were coming in. We ended up with, I think, 200 slides. The client went in, I wasn't in the meeting, but the client went in and we all sat there on tent up going, they'd been in there for hours and hours and hours. And they came out and I went, how did it go? And he went, yeah, it went really, really well. I went, oh, thank goodness for that, we put in so much time. How did the slides go? And he went, yeah, we stopped at like slide 4. Well, we spent all that time pulling, literally there were 200 slides, I kid you not, there were 200 slides. And from that day forward, I used to run an event called Better Culture, where we had presenters all on PowerPoint, but they all had 20 slides each and they changed automatically every 5 seconds, 20 seconds. So they were like 5 minutes. And people would try and put loads of words in, but we basically said, no, you need images and a little bit of text and you tell a story. Yeah. And it worked an absolute treat. People just love that fact of just tell me a story. I'm not here to read your slides. I'm here to listen to your story.
If you can't do it in 5 slides, there's something very wrong. And if you feel the need to have loads of information on there, always try and differentiate between a story, a presentation and a story. And your story should be you should have the presentation inside you should know the uplift it's going to give you. You should know, the commercialization of it should be there already. Yeah. It's not about trying to convince somebody with facts and figures. There's a well-known retailer out there who is doing really well and it is tipped to overtake Morrison's at the moment in the press in terms of success. And I think you may have visited one of their new stores recently.
Okay.
And if you go to them and you have that much PowerPoint, they will actually, stop you and say, we don't want to hear any more of this, because if you can't do it, personally, if you can't tell the story and you haven't got your facts and figures and you feel the need to support yourself with loads of data, then it isn't for them. And I think that's really brave. And I think that's one thing at Collective Stories, we tell our customers, we try unless it's quite detailed research that does need a bit more bunts behind it, but we try to keep the idea of simplicity and, you know, trying to keep it as simple as we can, make it as beautiful as it can. So we have a designer that works for us that makes everything look really classic and, you know, very simple. Because again, that's really important. Stop using crappy templates, people. If you have, you know, don't just accept that you have to use a template, strip it back, black and white, simple image, perfect, love it.
I mean, when we had a chat previously, and you kind of got out the book you need to read at the minute. It was Seth Godin's All Marketers Are Liars, was it?
Oh yes, well that's on my list, but I actually, my number one favourite is Drinking from the Fire Hose, but I go on about it so much I probably shouldn't, and that is how, so category managers are often faced with an absolute shitload of data. You know, we get so much of it, and you can sit there and you get data blind.
Yeah.
And you need to step away from it. And that is one thing we do as a business. We'll go into a business and we'll say to them, give us everything you've got. We're not frightened. Yeah. And then we can sift it very quickly. We can say not relevant, very relevant, expand, take on, move on. We don't labour the point.
Yeah.
Because let's not forget now, retailer data is so sophisticated, it's untrue. Most retailers have, specifically two I'm thinking about, so Sainsbury's and Tesco have customer-based data that is so sophisticated, it's untrue. They know everything about us, which is brilliant, because again, we've got this idea of bringing products that I want to see. And sometimes I feel like it takes a little bit of the mystique away, that we're not going in telling them things we found out about their customer. But you can still do that in categories by doing a lot of qualitative research. So getting a group of customers, getting them in a room, speaking to them and writing a story.
Yeah, I guess it's the same kind of thing, obviously, with the digital stuff that we do. We see a lot of data, so we're always in back of Google Analytics and SEO reports and stats. And again, one of the things I always tell my team, the kind of reports we deliver back to clients, don't give them loads and loads of information, because you see agencies, and I'm sure you've seen it, who will go, here's your report and it's that thick. And the client goes, oh, that's impressive, and puts it on the shelf, and there's nothing actionable. It's just a load of paper or a load of slides. Nobody ever looks through it. What they really want is, so for an SEO report, they want to go, okay, so all your top pages have just jumped from 0 to page 1 and we're killing it, and they've been there for ages. And they don't really care about other things. And if they do care about that, and if they do want to know about bounce rates and more in-depth things, then they'll come back and I'll tell them that information. But in general, most of my clients don't care about the minute detail that a lot of marketers get really, really excited about, where the client really doesn't care.
I'm a reluctant marketeer, so I've got no words about marketers and how they work with data. I'm sure it's all very scientific, but I think the benefit of doing a conversation like this, I think there's no point in having a conversation if you can't pass on some learnings to somebody. And so I just want to pass this on to your audience. The biggest thing when I'm presenting a story, so for you, it'll be the same when you're presenting your SEO, is know your numbers. So don't assume that you can get in there and just talk. You need to know your numbers. How big is that market? Where is the growth coming from? Where are the opportunities? How much will that deliver? So always have those in the back of your mind. That should always be there. You should always know that. And you should always know, if you are in a flat market, is it still a big market? Is it still attractive? So that is my number one learning. Know your numbers. Be passionate about your story. You know, if you're not feeling this story, why? You know, if it's a category that you feel a bit about, and that happens, see if you can find some joy in it, find an angle on it, a new spin on it, and make it interesting. I mentioned about, just going back to the data quantity, because I've just remembered the octopus that I wanted to speak to you about.
I was going to ask you about the octopus, yes. So go on.
So if this is an idea, this is actually one of the original collective stories ideas that we based the business on. And this was that a lot of businesses out there think about all of the stuff that they want to do and all of the things they want to achieve and all of the data and the presentations and the ideas they've got. And any entrepreneur out there will tell you what it's like. You're filled with ideas, but paralyzed with, you know, not knowing where to go with them. And we always liken that to putting an octopus in a shopping bag. So
okay,
I'll never give up on this octopus. You can get the octopus in the bag, but a tentacle will keep escaping.
Right.
And what we do at Collective Stories, we say, that's okay, that's fine, because every time a tentacle escapes, it points somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, look over here, but just make sure you all keep it all together and keep it focused.
Yeah.
So that was the octopus. I just had to say that whilst I thought about it.
No, I remember you mentioned that. I was like, what's an octopus? What?
That's one of my other audience learnings. So remember what I said, know your numbers, don't be frightened of the octopus. There's more stuff to come, I'm sure, as we go on. Sorry, Richard, next question.
No, it's fine. No, it's right. No, you carry on. It's great. it's great.
Yeah, but honestly, no. And again, the creativity thing with the octopus, you know, as long as you are professional in all situations, you know, if you've got a meeting with a very professional, serious organisation, probably don't mention a octopus. You know, but if you're feeling that the people in the room, so again, people on this call that I've personally connected with when I've been in very professional meetings with them, that's important because at the end of the day, we're humans. And if you feel that octopus rising to the surface, bring it out, because at least at the end of the day, you'll have a laugh.
One of those things about kind of storytelling is that it's that thing of you tell somebody, don't think of a blue tree, and they think of a blue tree. But by kind of bringing out that octopus thing, I've already got that in my mind, and I've got like especially for shopper stuff, you've got like, oh, if I'm Tesco's, I've got the octopus in the Tesco's bag, and I can see it, and I can see going, oh, that's Bob coming up with his daft idea again, and
no such thing. Love a Bob and his daft idea.
But do you know what I mean? That's I can see how that works in the storytelling, how that works.
So, and again, this is something that I refer to again and again. So I've got another one for you. It's not just the octopus. And people listening who know me will have heard this story. It's about compost. And I've mentioned the compost story. And sometimes I'm like, oh, Helen, don't talk about compost again. It's getting weird now. People are going to think that you're obsessed with like dirt and stuff like that. It's not weird. The writer Neil Gaiman talks about compost. And when he's writing, sometimes he has random ideas. So I had a random idea this morning when I was walking around Morrison's with my sister, just having a chit chat. I had a random idea, but I wrote it down because it was relevant to one of my clients, but it was also relevant to something else that I'm thinking about. So as you're going about your daily life or conversations I might have with friends, I'll think about, God, that'd be really good for someone. And I don't know why it's useful now, but I know it's going to be useful. So I have always around me at one point a notebook.
Okay.
And I'll put it in. So this is a particular favourite, impersonating Beyonce's It's Not Your Destiny, Child. That's RuPaul. And I'll put stuff in it. So in this one, I've written that I wanted to read the Seth Godin book, This Is Marketing.
Yeah.
But then I've also written some ideas I had about storytelling. So it's this idea of compost, because if you put something somewhere, it rots down and becomes rich.
Yes.
So all of these ideas that you've had in your life, you know, just get them written down somewhere, capture them, because then you won't start feeling naff about yourself, thinking I'm not moving stuff on, I'm not actioning it, when actually you are, if you get it on your compost heap.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the compost heap. Yeah, I've never heard it referred to as a compost heap before, but I like it.
Well, you can have that as well.
It's a nice way of. I think this keys into everything you do. It's a story again, isn't it? You've dropped a bit of visual in my mind of a compost that I go, all right, I'm going to put that on there, rather than somebody just going, yeah, just take a note, because that's not as.
Don't take a note.
It's kind of every day, isn't it?
You won't do anything with that note. So one of the notes also in this book says Sunny Delight. So the older people amongst us might remember Sunny Delight as one of the most successful product launches. I think it was the late 80s.
Yeah.
But do you know what? Do you know why I remember Sunny Delight? And I've written it down because it's an example I'm going to use for a storytelling course that I'm developing. Sunny Delight turned kids green, apparently. I have to say that, apparently. And that's why I remember it. So we will always remember the story around it. And actually, think about coronavirus. We feel how we feel about coronavirus because of a collection of tiny little stories that are thrown to us by Daily Mail, the Sky News, somebody we might have spoken to. This collection of tiny stories has given us this information and all of our perspectives on coronavirus.
Yeah.
As marketeers, as category managers, we are faced with IRI information, which is our information provider, Kantar information, loyalty card information. We get Corona information all the time, and it is a literal minefield, and it changes daily. So I thought about this, and I thought, I feel like I'm drowning in Corona information. So I put it all to the side on the compost heap, obs, and I went on YouGov and I looked at national mood, because that is the best. If any category managers listening are doing anything about coronavirus, go on YouGov, and they have a thing called the National Mood Tracker, and it is amazing. It basically tells you how the nation feels at a particular point, and it'll say, like, you know, people are anxious, people are hopeful, and if you look at it, it's literally shifting all the time. Massively recommend, you know, sort of finding those bits of compost. So knowing that I can go to YouGov and find that information about national mood, that's a blinder, isn't it?
Powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, advertisers could key into that, can't they? They can go, so the national mood is whatever, and so they can kind of change tech. You saw a lot of, I know it's not category management, you saw a lot of TV adverts as Corona hit suddenly go to a more sad and somber mode, which actually for me was kind of counterproductive. You kind of think, well, if the mood's going like that, then your marketing wants to kind of go like that a little, but not wacky and crazy, but
so
to lift spirits a bit.
You've absolutely hit, and that was something else I'd written on the compost heap to mention to you. So stories, 2 most impactful stories of the last year for me have been one by the Daily Telegraph, where it was a butterfly hitting itself against a glass window, and it was basically the point of the story was, if you keep going, if you are a tiny thing and you want to make a big change, keep going. And eventually this butterfly smashes the window and is free and goes outside to meet all its butterfly pals for a big butterfly mashup. I just added that last bit on because in my mind, that's what they're doing. They're all like antlers in the air, like you just don't care. But the second most important story, and again for category managers who are trying to tap into COVID-related sentiment, is it's a Coca-Cola advert, and it features somebody called George the Poet.
Yes.
Amazing. He's written this poem about Corona, but it speaks to about 7 different audiences.
Yeah.
To school kids. It speaks to parents who are homeschooling. So I think he says something like, now you think teachers deserve a pay rise, you know, and it speaks to about loneliness. It speaks about love and all of these different themes. But it's a poet, so it's got, you know, obviously it appeals to every creative person out there, but even the least creative people will still be moved by it. And I think that those 2 stories really sum up how the work that we as category managers do in the background in finding out how people are feeling, finding out what the trends are, finding out what's important to retailers and their customers. So think about Morrison's Feeding the Nation, local business, beloved in Yorkshire, Morrison's. We love Morrison's so much. You know, they really did tap into the people feeling fear about not being able to feed their older relatives. So they have phone lines for people to phone up, you know, who are technically not where they should be. Or Morrison's really focused on feeding the nation. And again, that story just makes me feel, you know, something. And that's what we do as a business. We use category management data and storytelling to bring all of that, but it's dynamic and it provokes action. So that's me.
That dynamism's interesting. In my head, supermarkets and that kind of thing move quite seasonally and quite glacially.
Yeah.
Is that the reality, or are they more dynamic and more fast moving?
Well, I mean, think about the scale of them, think about the size of them, but compared to somebody like America, we're obviously a lot smaller. But if you've got, you know, sort of 800 stores and you have to get the same product in the same place on the same size shelf at a certain level to make sure it's never out of stock, that is operationally quite difficult to do. Yeah. So we do have instances with retailers where they don't have as much agility as they used to do, but I think the retailers need a massive amount of kudos given to them for the amount of agility they've built into online in light of Corona. So they mobilised, they hired people, and they got, I think, is it Sainsbury's have got 1,000 more vans on the road, as Tesco have brought 4,000 more staff in to satisfy that need. So whereas supermarkets do have long lead times, so that's what we call from concept to shelf, there's a reason for that, because operationally it's not as simple as it looks. I think that they would love to be more agile, and sometimes they are. You know, you've got to think about, if it's a really big trend, how quick can you get it in? But again, look how quick they mobilised in getting hand sanitizer in, and you know, giving more space to home baking was a big thing during lockdown. You know, home baking exploded and a lot of categories expanded. So when we are forced to mobilise, or when there is a national benefit to it, we will.
Okay, interesting. That's really good. So I'm going to pull in. We've got Vicky and Emma on the call as well. Vicky or Emma, do you have anything that you would like to ask Helen? That was really hard to say. Ask Helen. I don't know why that got stuck. I stumbled over that. Never mind. Moving on. Vicky, or Emma, is there anything you'd like to ask?
I think it's interesting, because I think one of the things that's really memorable about you, Helen, and the reason people engage with you is because of your kind of octopus analogies and compost analogies, but they're ways of like making complex ideas feel really accessible, and I think creating kind of a unique rapport with people so that they kind of buy into what, like, in reality are quite often quite boring sort of topics. And I think, like, it's interesting what you were saying about you know, like being careful about what you say to people depending on how they react. But I think, knowing you, I think you've always been yourself, and that is that's what makes you unique and makes people want to work with you. I mean, what advice would you give to people on that kind of maybe worry about that? I know it's something I worry about a lot.
I do worry. So I have been in the past in appraisals and stuff. You know, people have said, be careful of humour and be careful not to misuse humour. And I took that on as, at first I thought, oh no, I'm a bungling clown, and you know, that I took that quite personally. But then actually, I worked on that as a development point, and I thought, as long as you are always professional and you always deliver what you've said you're going to deliver, if you can bring a bit of humanity and relevant humour and always respectful humour, then it makes these things a little bit more pleasant, because sometimes when we are talking about boring subjects, it's more memorable, and I would rather be known as somebody who people are pleased to see, you know, because it's a bit more interesting. I'd say to people who are starting out in the industry, who feel that they can't be their true selves, you know, just be yourself, but be respectful, be professional. And the two pieces of advice that I gave you before, as long as you know your numbers and you have dynamic outputs when you're going in to tell a story, if you can make it a bit more entertaining, it will be more memorable. But, you know, don't force it. Try and be as natural as you can. And I do have times where I think, oh God, why did I say that? I mean, Emma, who was on this call, we've had some classic moments of why did we say that? But actually, it makes you human, and everybody does that. Everybody will say, why did I say that? But that moment's gone, and you can dwell on it, or you can sort of think, oh well, you know.
I think that's a key thing that I tell a lot of my clients is it's an age-old thing, but people buy from people. And if you come in as this faceless corporate machine type thing, unless you're IBM or something like that, it doesn't work. So it's that personality. People do buy from people, no matter who you are. If you're horrible, if you're not a personable person, if you antagonize people, people aren't going to go with you. They're not going to follow you. They're not going to believe in you. And that's what all business is about for me, is about getting people to believe in what you're telling them. Because it is, you have to counter the barriers. I mean, I'm sure you hit it as well. You come across as a marketer, and I've had clients who've been burnt before.
Yeah.
People who said to me, oh yeah, we've tried social media before, or we've tried SEO before, or we've tried AdWords, or whatever they've tried before, and they go, it don't work. And they have to go, well, that's that. You have to kind of work your way past that by going, there must have been reasons why it didn't work. Let's go back and see what was wrong with it. How did that unravel itself, and it's tricky, but you have to take people on a journey and sell them that story.
But, and also, again, another learning point. I love conversations like this simply because I think if you can, I love to learn off other people, never stop learning off other people. So I always think, you know, if I see somebody and I think they are so cool, what can I learn from them? Sorry, I'm not saying, just to qualify, I'm not saying I'm cool, by the way, but what if you read a room, if you've been labouring a point on a deck and it's not hitting it, move on.
Yeah.
Unless that point is absolutely crucial, move on. Don't labour it any further because it will annoy people. Read a room, and you know, you can always, if you have misused humour or said something that's a little bit abstract, let's be realistic. If you've had a bit of Octopus fun time and it's gone too far, you can bring it back, and you can bring it back really well. You can say, well, just move on from that now. You know, it's gone, it's been said. It's just, it's moving on and not dwelling on it, I think, helps me. But I don't know what happened, because in my 30s I was certainly somebody who did dwell on stuff like that, but I don't know whether it came from getting older, and actually I gave less of a fig about stuff like that. See how I carefully use the language there.
Yeah. I think with a lot of things like that, with presentations, people get hung up on what they're supposed to say. They kind of go, oh, we're supposed to say this bit, but if it's not there in the moment, if it's not naturally coming, then don't say it, regardless if you go down and practice it for hours. Just leave it and move on. Don't say it and don't worry about it. And have you ever been in a presentation where you've got this deck and you've worked on it? So I find the bigger the deck and the more I've worked on it, the more the problem is from me. So what I will always do, I will always take my deck, my PowerPoint deck, and make a mini deck and think, if I had 30 minutes to do this, what would I do? And basically write down the 5 things that I want to get across. If you read Drinking from the Fire Hose, which is an amazing book, then they talk about the what. So the what is the problem, the so what, so that's the research around it, and then the now what am I going to do with it? And I think that has certainly helped me. What I was saying was, if you ever go into a presentation, and I don't know if anybody on the call ever gets that thing where your breath suddenly gets really fast and you're like, you know, and you're struggling to breathe as deeply as you can. I get it where I feel like I'm at the top of my breath. That used to happen to me when I knew I had something massive to present, whereas actually I started to enjoy it more and think, I actually really love presenting, I love talking, you know. You get the buzz, don't you?
Yeah, so I don't know if I've answered any questions there, but yeah.
You've answered lots for me, that's great. Emma, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
I do. So I would like to ask, where I think it's going a little bit back to the octopus analogy, but I'd like to ask Helen's advice on, if you're literally bursting with stuff that you want to say, present, you've got like a whole host of benefits and a brilliant story, how do you then go about sort of consolidating that into potentially your 5 slides or your really simplified message, when actually it could get really complicated?
I love that question, and I feel like I could frame that question in so many different ways. But do you know the biggest piece of advice for that's when I was talking about, you know, bursting with data almost. It's the same situation. You've got this idea and this story that you want to get across, but you're right at the beginning, all of the stuff, the octopus's tentacles are basically having a bit of a rave. It's everywhere. So what I do then is I am very much, have you heard of Google Sprints? Yeah. So Google Sprints is an idea of innovation development, and it's where they challenge themselves to innovate in a very small amount of time, and they do that by using design and drawing and not writing. And actually, I have to say, look into that a little bit more, because that is very effective if you're developing products, which I know is your massive background. Now, what I would say, if it's a project that you've already done all of that and you've got all of the information and all of these ideas and this story that you want to tell, go on Amazon, get some A1 paper, I buy rolls of tracing paper and I roll them out, and I start at the beginning with Sharpies and I write everything down on it. And it's as simple as that. And then eventually the paper gets smaller for me and it will come up with the 5 slides. So it's called zero drafting, the actual concept. And it's just an idea of emptying your head onto paper, and you quickly cut through it, and then you have a break, and then you cut it again. And I can take something from a day, an awful lot of information, and I can work through the day and cut it to 5 slides. I'm not going to go near PowerPoint until I've got everything down, because my biggest fear is missing something and taking the wrong turn with the story. So to avoid that, I do a 0 draft every time, tracing paper and Sharpies. It looks really nice as well, because I love pens and stuff like that. That's my biggest bit of advice, and it sounds simple, but you will absolutely smash it once you do that. If you've got a big table, just get it on. I'm not a fan of whiteboards, it's too squeaky, but that's how you tame your octopus.
But how do you go about making those calls of what you cut, Helen? How do you decide that stays, that goes?
If your story is for a retailer, or if your story is for several retailers, so every product story, so my idea would be product. Every product story would be, my biggest target here is Morrison's or Tesco or Aldi or Boots. I will always, when I'm 0 drafting, have their shopper in my head or their strategic plans. So for somebody like Tesco, I'd be thinking EDLP, Tesco Club Card Only pricing, which they've just recently announced. I would be thinking that is really important. So that's in my 0 draft already. So as I'm 0 drafting, I'm building on that. So don't be afraid if your 0 draft is massive, because it will always get smaller. But if you are doing something that is for the entire market, so if you just invented a new tinned product, an ambient tinned product, and you don't know where it's going to go yet, so don't bring the retailer into it. Think about the retailer, the customer, and you as the supplier, and what you need to get across. So you'll have some objectives as well of how much of this you've got to sell, at what price it's got to be. But keep those 3 things at front of mind at all time when you're 0 drafting. Does that make sense? But don't be overwhelmed by it, again, is another thing. So I know I've got a big personal project that I want to do this weekend. So we're relaunching our brand, and we've taken it as far as we can, but actually I'm going to challenge it this weekend. I'm going to say, I'm going to 0 draft this again to make sure I've not missed anything. Don't be paralysed by it. Get it all down, and then it will evolve. Keep it to 1 piece of paper or 1 long piece of paper. Don't, sort of end up like a Victorian bookkeeper surrounded by bits of paper. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Lovely. I guess conversely from that, what do you do if you get stuck completely and you go, right, you've got your big roll of paper out and you go, I've got one idea, and then you go, that's it, I'm empty?
That never happens.
Okay.
Ever. That has literally never happened. Or if it does, start coming up with crazy ideas. So literally, if somebody says, right, we want to go to the moon, we don't know how we're going to get there, just start coming up with stuff, because there's always some blue sky to be seen. And that's where you go to your compost heap, to be honest.
Yeah.
Go and have a look in that compost heap. So Emma, where you were saying about having to get a deck really condensed, have a look in that compost heap and see what was there. Have a quick look online and, sort of look at, I always like to get a really nice PowerPoint template and look at the way that they've framed stuff, and sort of, that's a good idea. Have a look on Etsy. They do some really good PowerPoint templates on there.
Wow, okay. I didn't know you could get PowerPoint from Etsy.
They're only about £4.
Right, okay. Excellent. Okay, well, that's been absolutely amazing, and I don't know if you've ever seen the show on Dave. Alan Davies does it, and he kind of goes, "We've got this unknown, and by the end of it, we'll have a name for the show."
Yeah.
And I think if this one, I'm looking at either Tame Your Octopus, 0 Drafting, or Sunny D Turn Kids Green might be a nice one.
I don't want to get sued. I'd rather you didn't go down
Allegedly.
I feel like I'm going to get sued by the octopus community for misrepresentation. I don't need Procter & Gamble coming after me as well. So if you could not put Sunny Delight, that'd be great.
I really won't do that now.
Yeah.
But no, that's been amazing. I really love that. I love the kind of conversations where it's it gets more esoteric and less kind of nuts and bolts. Do you know what I mean? It's creative, and that's the bit of marketing that I love. I love the ideation, the coming up with strategy and things. I'm not the nuts and bolts. It's fine, and I can do that, and I like that. But I like the talking, the thinking. You get
one shot at this, and sort of, if you can make it all a bit more interesting. And the people on this call, I think, love nothing more than a completed offer and a completed, I've got all of this great energy inside me, I need to get it on paper so that I can show these people who I want to sell my product to how wonderful it is. Yeah. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming. So just remember simplicity, but don't be afraid to, that octopus, he needs to come out, he needs a bit of a rave up. So on that note.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Helen, and thanks to Vicky and Emma for coming on the call. This has been recorded, so it'll be on the YouTube channel very shortly, and we'll have another Marketing Optimist Sandwich Course webinar. We'll come up with a shorter name for that. It's got a bit of a mouthful now. There'll be another webinar along very shortly. So thank you very much. Have a great day.